Коллеги, рад вас приветствовать. Я Михаил Сафонов, руководитель Центра обучения комплексными проектами «Сафонов и партнеры». Это интервью, оно англоязычное. Я взял его у легендарной личности Дэвида Хилсона, еще его называют «риск-доктор». Очень интересное интервью, оно посвящено теме управления рисками. И мы обсудили разные направления, причем какие взяли? Взяли тему, связанную с худшими практиками управления рисками. Это было очень интересно. Да. Все говорят про что-то хорошее, интересно поговорить, как оно, когда не получается. Это раз. Мы обсудили темы, связанные со спецификой управления рисками в чем-то в России. Да. Ну, интересно же, поскольку Дэвид работал в разных странах, и у него есть общее видение о том, как это происходит в мире. Плюс у него еще интереснее, чем взгляд, тем, что он участвовал в разработке как раз раздела, связанного с управлением рисками в 6-й версии PMBOK. Поэтому встречайте Дэвид Хилсон, управление рисками, и подписывайтесь на канал, будет много еще интересных интервью. А по возможности, конечно, обещаю, не обещаю, постараюсь перевести его на русский язык, поскольку это вещь трудозатратная. Если кто-то хочет включиться в перевод, присоединяйтесь, пишите мне спокойно в Фейсбуке, ВКонтакте, я внизу напишу контакт, или пишите здесь в комментариях, и мы сделаем с вами еще и русскоязычный вариант вот этого интервью. Так что Дэвид Хилсон, управление рисками проекта.
I'm David Hillson. I'm known as the Risk Doctor. I've been involved in risk management since 1984, when I was very young, you understand. I've developed an interest in risk management very widely, not just in projects and programs, but also in organizations, strategic and corporate risk, actually in risk at the national level as well, and also for risk in terms of personal decision making. So it's been my focus for 35 years, and I find risk management very interesting. I've worked in 50 different countries around the world, every continent except the Antarctic. My work is translated into the Russian, so on the Risk Doctor website you'll find 100 papers written in Russian or translated to Russian for your readers, for our viewers. I find it very interesting still to see how risk management develops and can be used to help people, individuals, organizations and societies to manage uncertainty better.
Why have you decided to work in this area? Because there are a lot of areas of management you can work with, and now you decided to work in this.
I think I saw the world was increasingly becoming uncertain, both in the industry where I was working at the time, in the 1980s, and more widely. And I had a young family as well. I was interested in thinking about how we might address an uncertain world. And I discovered risk management just at that time when the world was becoming uncertain and when we needed a way to deal with it. So I think it's a very natural thing to do as a human being to try to manage uncertainty. But the reason I've stayed involved, there are two reasons. One is because risk management works. It actually helps us to look ahead to the future and manage proactively to help us achieve our goals. And the second is that it's very simple, actually. The risk management process is intuitive. It's built into us as human beings to think about the future,
so it's natural.
To try and prepare ourselves or position ourselves.
And it's interesting to know you work in different countries. And are there different approaches to risk management, or in all these countries is the same?
Well, certainly when you think about how cultures address uncertainty, there are big differences. So some cultures are comfortable with uncertainty and some wish to control or to scope uncertainty more tightly. And there's been some very interesting work by a couple of Dutch psychologists. One is called Hofstede and the other is called Trompenaars, back in the 1970s and 80s, on mapping cultural characteristics. And the way that cultures deal with uncertainty is part of that mapping. So I think the basic sort of cultural thoughts about uncertainty, and it's tied in with history and with religion and with society values and so on. They are quite different, but the way that
Could you give some example?
About risk,
not general.
Sorry, say again.
Could you give some example of this difference in different countries? For example, two countries and main difference. What are there?
Okay. So, for example, in the Hofstede mapping, you might find a country, let's say like Singapore, as an example. There are many other examples. Singapore is quite structured. They like to have things very ordered, very controlled, and it's a value, it's a positive thing in Singapore. So for them, they're very uncomfortable with uncertainty, and so it's important for them to have a strong risk management approach in the culture. On the other end of the Hofstede scale, you might have a country like Mexico, which is very relaxed. You have the kind of, well, mañana, tomorrow we worry about these things, it'll be okay. And they're much more comfortable with uncertainty. And so risk management is less important. You have in countries like the UK or Scandinavian countries a real interest in process, in structure, and so that also controls the way that they think about uncertainty, whereas other countries, maybe in Africa, are more concerned about people and about relationships. And so that drives the way that they deal with uncertainty. We use process in the Anglo countries, they use relationship in the African countries. So it's a fascinating area.
What could you say about Russia? What do you think about this specific way of manage risks? Do you have some experience or maybe ideas about it?
I've been to Russia 3 times, or 4 times. And I have some good Russian friends, some risk management specialist colleagues as well. And I think Russia, like many countries, is rediscovering its identity. And we're finding this in the UK. You know, what does it mean to be British? And we're going back to our old values, but also realizing we're part of a modern world. And you will know better than me that there is an old Russian identity and there is a new Russian identity. And I think in the culture, there's often some discussion or conversation about how you bring the old and the new together. So I see in my very small contacts with my Russian friends some interest in the old values and in structure and process and in authority, and some interest in the new values of entrepreneurship and innovation and responding more quickly. So I think it's a very interesting, fluid situation in Russia, and I'm watching it with great interest.
So, if I want to implement project risk management, yes, in my organization, what do I have to do? Are there some steps I have to go through to make it in a good way? Could you advise something?
Yes. There's a lot of discussion about top-down or bottom-up. And so should you start with a risk initiative by having the chief executive or the board saying, we need to do risk management, and they instruct the organization and then they do it? Or is it better to say at the project level or the operations level, let's just start doing it down and it will build up into an organizational approach? My view, both. So you don't want top-down or bottom-up. You want what I call ends-in. So it is important to have senior management commitment and a mandate or a directive to say, for our organization, risk management is important. But it's equally important at the working level for people to have processes and tools and techniques and the mechanism to actually do it in practice. So you have to have that senior management commitment, and you have to have the practical tools at the working level. And then the key success factor is connecting the two. So you don't have people working down here trying to manage risk on their projects or in their operations in a way that is different from what the senior leadership wants. And you have senior management expecting things and demanding things which the organization can't deliver because it doesn't have the skills or the tools. So I would think both of those things are important. In my work, I've developed 4 things which I think are important in terms of risk management competence or capability. And all of these need to be present in an organization to make it work. The first, and we started to talk about this with nations, the first is culture. So organizational or corporate culture needs to recognize that we're working in an uncertain environment, but we can do something about it. We're not victims of our environment. We can manage that proactively. And having a culture that recognizes risk sees it as a natural challenge and is prepared to deal with it. So culture. Processes are clearly important. We need processes to address risk in a structured way, but they're not everything. Experience is important. So culture, process, experience. Having good people who are trained in the skills, who understand the concepts. And finally, application. We actually have to do it and to do it well. So if you don't have all of those four things, a supportive, risk-mature culture, effective processes, good people with experience, and then application across the organization, then it's not going to work.
And you know, a very often question when project managers try to, they ask, how could we explain to our top management that risk management is very important? Could you advise something, how to explain?
Yes, it's important that we speak the language of the people we're addressing. So when we're talking to top management about risk and the importance of risk management, we need to talk about the things that matter to them. So they are concerned not about delivery dates or about budgets or about, technical solutions. They're concerned about strategy, about market share, about value to the customer, about reputation. And so what we need to do when we're talking about the value of risk is frame our discussion with the leadership of how risks could affect the things that matter to them. So if we don't control our risks in our operations or our projects, then we don't deliver our project benefits on time, then our customers are not satisfied, then we don't get more work, and then our reputation suffers, and then we lose market share. So if you make that connection between project and operational delivery and effective management of risk at the bottom, connect that with reputation, with market share, with competitive advantage, then senior management will listen. And it's important to make that connection when we're speaking up to them. But the same is true going the other way. When we're talking to project managers or technical teams about risk management, we don't talk about reputation or market share. We talk about delivering your project on time, on budget, full performance, delighting the customer, and actually having a successful project. And then they'll listen because you're talking about things that matter to them.
Okay, thank you. And my last question, we spoke now about some best practices, I would say, so yes, some part of them. Do you know some worst practices when people try to implement project risk management, yes, in project management or organization management, and it doesn't work? Could you say some of them?
Yes, a lot of people are interested in best practices. You tell me what the good things are, and we'll try very hard to do that. And best practices or good practice is clearly important. But I think that's a great question. What are the worst practices? What are the bad practices to avoid? And sadly, there are still a lot of them out there. In fact, I wrote a book a couple of years ago about 10 common risk management errors or mistakes or diseases that people suffer from. And there are quite a lot of them. But because they're common, then we've worked out solutions or answers to them. So if you suffer from one of these bad practices, there is a solution. I think the most common is to see risk management as a separate discipline. It's a separate area done by specialists. So some risk person does risk management. The risk manager manages risk, and then I don't have to worry about it. I'm a project manager, I have a risk guy. I'm an operational manager, I have a risk department. I'm the chief executive, I have a chief risk officer. And so they don't worry about risk because someone is doing that for me. And we forget that risk affects all of us. And if my project is affected and I'm the project manager, then I have to manage those risks myself. So the first mistake, I think, bad practice, is putting it in a box and thinking that's risk management over there. The second bad practice, I think, is thinking that risk management is too expensive. So we're spending money to stop things happen. And maybe if we didn't do anything, they wouldn't happen anyway. So maybe we could just get lucky. And perhaps we should rely on good luck. And all of this spending money and having risk reviews and risk reports to make nothing happen, what's the point? Maybe nothing will happen anyway. And so what we need to do is not connect risk to things not happening, but we should connect risk to things that do happen. So it's not that we stopped things happening, but we made our projects succeed. We made our projects deliver on time, under budget, to the full performance. So connecting it to real value and benefits, if we don't do that, that's a big mistake. And a third thing, which I think is really a really big bad practice, is to see all risk as bad. The current best practice understanding of risk is that there are bad risks, threats, things that are uncertain if they happen will hurt us, but there are also good risks, opportunities,
yes.
Things that are uncertain, but if they happen, they will help us. And too many organizations focus only on the bad risks and try and stop bad things happening, which is important, but we also need to make good things happen. And the risk process should do both of those things, minimize threats and maximize opportunities at the same time. And I think a big bad practice is only to focus on the downside, the negative, and to forget that actually you could use uncertainty to your advantage.
Okay, thank you. And one more question. Appeared the 6th edition of PMBOK Guide. And is there any difference about risk management? Or everything is the same?
Yes, the PMBOK Guide 6th edition came out in September of 2017. And I was the vice chairman of the update project, which was a great honor and privilege for me. I spent 3 years helping to manage this very big update project. And as part of my responsibility, I also was responsible for the risk management chapter. And I've actually contributed to the risk chapter in every PMBOK Guide edition since the year 2000. So I know it very well. This time we have made some changes. We've actually added a new process in the risk management chapter. There was in the old process, we had identified risks, you analyze risks, you plan your responses, and you monitor. Or you monitor the risk exposure. There was nothing between planning responses and monitoring. And there was nowhere in the process where you actually did risk management. And so we've added a new process called implement risk responses. So you plan the risk responses, then you do it, and then you monitor the results. So there's a new process called implement risk responses. We've also recognized that you don't just have to manage the detailed risks within the project. You also need to manage the overall riskiness of the whole project, which is a different level of risk exposure. It's not just this bad thing might happen, this good thing might happen, but what does it mean for the whole project? And so there's a better emphasis on overall risk exposure and how do you assess that and manage it. Thirdly, there's something to do with agile. There's a lot of new material in the whole PMBOK Guide 6th edition on linking the processes with agile or adaptive approaches. So a lot of people say that risk management doesn't apply to agile projects because the whole agile methodology is about reducing risk. In the risk management chapter, we talk about actually how you do risk management within an agile or adaptive environment. And then the last thing, which I think is important, is that we continue to focus on upside risk opportunities equally with threats. So throughout the whole chapter, you'll find it tells you how to identify opportunities, how to pick out the good ones, how to develop responses, and how to make them happen. And I think that's an important emphasis which is continuing. So it's in the chapter.
Okay. So, thank you very much. And your last advice to project management who want to manage risk, do you have some?
Yes, of course. Don't give up. Keep the faith. Keep strong. Always look ahead and be proactive. So it's important for us to be, as project managers, we should look ahead. I think risk management is like a radar. It scans the future. It says what's out there and what's coming my way, and how do I position myself now to be ready for the future. And for project managers, we're very busy people. We have lots of things to think about, but the most important thing to think about are the risks that haven't happened yet. Both the bad things we can see now and avoid and minimize, and the good thing we can see now and to receive or prepare to capture. So risk management is one of the most important things you can do, but don't forget to be proactive and to actually take action now to manage risk before it arrives.
So thank you very much. It was very interesting. So thank you.
Okay, Michal, thank you very much for the opportunity to share some ideas.
Yes, thank you.
I hope that our listeners and viewers have found it interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Mm-hmm.